I'm Dr. Karthik Nagendra. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of DemandFarm, a leader in digital key account management solutions. Welcome to our podcast, The Shift. It is a thought leadership podcast which focuses on bringing together sales and marketing leaders from across the world to share their perspectives around the future of key account management. I came across some interesting data. According to JP Morgan, the global economy is projected to expand at a sluggish pace of around 1.6% in 2023 as the financial conditions tighten. According to a study by Statista, businesses worldwide will spend $3.4 trillion on their transition to becoming a digital-first enterprise. A McKinsey study shows that more than 3/4 of buyers and sellers say they now prefer a digital self-serve and remote human engagement over face-to-face interactions. So these are some interesting data points across three different areas that we're looking at. So my guest today, James Manno, VP Enterprise for Qualtrics, will be with us to share his perspectives on the role of key account management during a slowdown, driving sales growth with existing customers. So let's hear what James has to share with us. So James, really nice to have you with us here today. My first question is, what are your key expectations from your teams with respect to the sales strategy and managing key customers during this time of economic slowdown?
Yeah, thanks, Karthik. It's great to be here. So what we've seen across our sales teams, right, is a need for an increased focus on business impacts, right? I think that when you think about the software as a service space, the value propositions are very different depending on the offering, depending on the customer and the client. And it's no surprise now that every piece of spend, every budget line item is under tremendous amount of scrutiny, right? So when in the past, when organizations, would have the luxury to purchase software that may be somewhat of a nice to have or would alleviate, some pain for the few, now we have to make sure that our quota carrying reps are laser focused on key business outcomes that are most critical for the organization, right? And some of the tenets that come with that are the need for multi-threading an account more than ever, right? I think that I think a lot of reps in an honest moment can look back in time and remember a sales cycle or an opportunity where they were able to sell to maybe the program owner, right? Or one step down from the budget owner, or maybe not have an executive sponsor. But in this climate, it's a complete 180, right? Because not only, is executive alignment and executive sponsorship table stakes, and it always has been, now it crosses outside of the buying center, right? So what I mean by that is the CIO is more involved, specifically the CFO and finance. So traditionally, when people own their budgets and it was their money, they could spend it autonomously. Now it's under scrutiny from a few others. So the complexity of the sale and the message has to be honed in more than ever.
True. That's so right? I think post-COVID, a lot of things have also changed with respect to how the entire sales process itself is taken forward. And I think that was quite instrumental in fast-tracking a lot of digital transformation as well, right? So we are seeing rapid digital transformation of different functions and especially sales and marketing functions as well. And we find that key account management is one area that has probably largely remained untouched in a lot of organizations. So I would love to hear your views on that. And, as a follow-up, do you see a need for digital transformation of account planning, relationship planning, opportunity planning, among other areas?
Yes, it's a great question. I mean, I do, because it is the most critical aspect of, creating account strategy, creating account teams, and with how critical those motions are, right? In order to have a strategy for what you're going to accomplish with your customers, there's still a lot of noise out there, right? I mean, there's no shortage of places to find information on companies and people.
Yeah.
But what we find is that it's hard at scale to get sellers or reps to focus, right? And being able to to conform in the ways that you go about, account planning or, creating a value proposition for an organization, right? So I think you're spot on. If there's a way that, something that I always think about, it's, Karthik, I talk to my team often that it's not the $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, $5 million deals that we're worried about. Those get the attention and love that they need, right, from the masses. Like we're very competent in, taking down the large strategic deals. What keeps me up at night is more about how we give that type of experience to all customers at scale, right? And I think it goes back to, the conformity around account planning and being able to have a system and a process that everybody believes in, adopts, and that we can do across the board.
That's so true, and I think bringing that consistency and kind of institutionalizing it across your customers and across the sales team is a very crucial aspect. So James, we also see that with this digital transformation which has happened, there are a lot of tools which organizations have started using, especially from sales and marketing standpoint. So can you give a high level overview on some of the tools, probably like your sales intel tools or sentiment analysis tools that your teams use for account management?
Yeah, you want to understand what we're using today and just some
So do you use any of these tools and for account management, and do you actually find it challenging to use so many of these sales tools? Because these days we also have a lot of tech tools which are out there, so sometimes even that could get overwhelming. So wanted to understand what's your experience at Qualtrics and with your teams.
Yeah, so it's interesting because to date myself a little bit, I come from the days when CRM and cloud was an early concept, right? And trying to explain to directors of an IT and CIOs that the cloud's the future, you get a lot of doors slammed in your face back in 2006, 2007, right? So I've seen CRM evolve over the years, right? And I do remember a time when it really was a system of truth where there was a lot of rigor and compliance around, entering data into CRM. As I look back over the past 5 years or so, people are getting away from that, right? It's slowing people down, and I think that there's always challenges around, rich data integrity, right? And I think for more of like an inside sales team or a corporate sales team, it's a little bit easier to mandate those type of activities. When you talk about, enterprise strategic sellers at the highest levels, it's hard to dictate what they do when they've been, in the game for 15, 20 plus years, right? They all kind of have their own operational model, right? So, but at the same time, you want to look to get the other reps, up to that type of level. So to your point, like conformity is key. The other thing that's interesting now is all the add-ons on top of the CRMs, right? It's like ways to make that easier ways to forecast, right? Some of the AI and ML that for someone at my level, like at the RVP level that manages, frontline managers and reps, some of that automation, I think, and innovation has been helpful, right? Some of the data models to see forecasting has been really helpful, especially again, to your point earlier. I mean, this is a unique selling environment. So, committed deals and verbal commits look a lot different than they did 5 years ago, right? The other piece, we've, throughout my time over doing this for the past 15 years, I've seen all kinds of different tools, as far as account planning, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is an obvious one. Databook is one that we have a partner with that is really good, that consolidates information either as a business case or buying attributes for a certain client, keeps track of news and headlines for you, right? So it's, but what you still find the best reps, I mean, for one, it's just output and effort. I mean, that's something that's consistent across the board. I mean, the people that have a passion for research, right? And the people that dedicate the time and use a multitude of sources have the most success. But again, that's great for the top 5% of the reps. But to my earlier point, how do we get the other 95% to adopt to that? So, I think a tool or a platform can help drive that as well. Yeah.
It's very interesting you mentioned, right? So like 15 years back or so when cloud and CRM were all, the up and coming technologies. And, today we are looking at that as the future. So one thing we would also look into is bringing account planning, review, and governance inside your CRM actually seems like a no-brainer. And yet, a lot of companies kind of resist committing to that journey. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the main tenets of Qualtrics, right, is like engaging customers or engaging employees, and soliciting feedback where they live and work, right? So I think the same principle holds true for a sales organization. And if you have an integrated experience, and if you kind of are able to engage a rep in their day-to-day motions of the tools and the systems that they see valuable, you're going to get higher adoption, obviously, right? So I think anything that's, it's, how it is, right? Anything that's going to take multiple logins, and this is pretty true with any SaaS business application, right? It's like any system where you have to jump in and out of, where you don't have the view in one place, especially with with an audience like a sales reps that are, a little bit harder to, adopt to sometimes to technology. I mean, they're not, it's not a project management team, a program management team that goes through change management and rolls out tools all the time, right? I mean, these are individuals that are laser focused on revenue. So I think it's critical, right? And to your point, it's critical to engage the end user where they live.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. What do you think could be the role of the executive leadership in probably driving this change and adoption of new tools and technologies to move key account management and make it more digital in nature?
Yeah, so I think all change starts from the top, right? I think that, the best way, and we talk to our clients about this all the time, is that the best way to drive change and to roll out a new process or new application or tool, whatever it is for every level of the organization that's involved to understand the value, to themselves, right? The impact. So again, I think there's a top-down governance aspect of this. The interesting thing about Qualtrics is that I've learned, and it's been newer for us in my career, is that we have a very far reach, right? Like we have a very popular brand. We have a phenomenal executive team, and we have a very loyal client base now of almost 20,000 clients that word of mouth goes a long way, right? I remember it was only 6 or 7 years ago on an airplane trying to do, people couldn't pronounce Qualtrics. Now it's a household name for all things feedback and experience management, right? So the point is like, with the ability to get high and to leverage the network and to connect with executives, how do you bridge the gap to what the reps are doing on the front lines, right?
Yeah.
And the only way that you can do that really is to be organized, to have a strong strategic point of view, and to get everybody in the organization aligned behind you. And again, it's time and research to do that, right? Because it's one thing to get a meeting. It's another thing to go in as a trusted advisor with a very unique perspective on somebody's business. It's going to give them insights that they have not heard before, right? And the only way to do that, right, is to take it out of email, most importantly, because email is not a business process tool. It's actually the worst business process tool, right? And, even some of the things like, some Slack and chat, very impactful from a communication perspective. But when you think about organizing a sales cycle, organizing an account team of 10, 15, or 20 people, you need to have some sort of consistency, and traditional and typically technology will help drive that, right? That's typically what we see.
So any such change, definitely a top-down approach is what works. And we've also seen at DemandFarm is a lot of our clients who've been really successful in this space are ones where the executive leadership really believe that this is the way forward if they need to maintain a competitive advantage.
One real quick, Karthik, because the top down is key, right? I mean, you have to have the sponsor of the organization, but something I just thought of is like, I like to title meetings with my organization of the title, How I Made Money Last Week. And it's amazing how many people show up to that meeting, right? So when you pilot, some of those tools to get a smaller community bought in, some of your better reps, and to show that the technology has a direct correlation to, higher commissions, shorter sales cycles, larger deal sizes, to be able to, test that internally and to show that firsthand typically goes a long way for adoption as well.
That's a very interesting one. I would urge our viewers to note down this tip. That's a very interesting With James brought up. So James, right now in the current macroeconomic environment, there's a lot of budgetary cuts which are also happening. So in such a situation, how do you actually make a case for investment in digital transformation of key account management when all these spends are under a microscope?
Yeah, again, I think that it's clear to understand who the audience is, right? And then what the message is. I mean, we've talked to CROs because we do have an offering through Qualtrics that's more on the account management side. I think that, a big piece of the sales cycle that's missing is the voice of the prospect, the voice of the client. Like, how are we doing? Like, what is your experience like throughout the sales cycle? Where can we improve? Traditionally, Karthik, organizations find this out too late, right? With Qualtrics, if we can create an inflection point mid-sales cycle, post-demo, post-quote, whatever it is, like a safe place to give candid feedback at scale, you can pivot, you can get better, and you can train your clients, and you can train your sellers, right? To give them an improved experience. Now, what's interesting is, we've spoken to CROs through those types of use cases, and some organizations that come to mind, I mean, just an increase of 1% on their, renewal rate, right? Can be millions and millions in revenue retention, right? So these things are, critical to have a strategy, to make sure that everybody's organized and aligned on the same message.
So true about it. So my next question, I call it the crystal gazing question, right? What do you think, or how do you see the future of key account management shaping up? And what would be that critical path for companies who are just starting off on that journey?
Yeah. I mean, another core tenet of Qualtrics is that, business interactions need to be more human. And I think that applies, to sales as well, right? It's people expect a very tailored experience, and people expect sellers to be prepared and to know their business and to know them very well, right? And again, to give them one of those insights that they're missing, or especially in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, I always kind of give ourselves a hard time, but there's a large level of FOMO, right? If one organization in their space hears about something progressive or innovative that they're doing, you're going to get their attention, right? So I think that's also key, is to kind of focus on delivering a message that's repeatable for a certain industry. But yeah, I mean, I think the future of account management is like it's probably model based, right? I mean, I think that the automation to be able to aggregate data quicker, to be able to it's all about getting time back, right? So if the less manual it is to dig through the web, right? To send cold outreach, and the ability to understand a persona or a profile, like, immediately, what's their personality type? What have they purchased before? What is their experience buying SaaS or platform? Have they ever done digital transformation before? Have they ever done any keynotes, any literature, any writings in the market? Like, what type of person is this, or people that you're selling to, in order to give them that unique experience that is demanded through a sales cycle these days, right? Because it's not the days of just showing up and throwing up and talking about technology. There was some sizzle behind that, and there's been a lot of SaaS that's sold in the past, but those days are gone, right? You have to be locked in on realistic, measurable business impacts, because people are more risk adverse than ever, right? I mean, that's the byproduct of this climate, is that they have to believe in your ability to deliver your technology, your services, your ecosystem, in order to get their trust. That's the bottom line.
So my last question, James. So you are a successful sales leader. So what would be your key advice to sales teams to continue performing at their best levels, given today's reality?
Yeah, it's it's to be pragmatic, right? I think that I've seen strategic selling teams that have, very large vertical account teams, 20, 30 people that only sell to one or two accounts, right? The luxury of that model is that you have time, right? You have time to do nothing but research and prep and account management and all the things that we've been talking about. I think that's probably more at the top end, right? I think more the traditional larger companies. And what's more common in the SaaS space are reps that have, 10, 15, 20 accounts. And how do you have enough time to give the same level of attention to all the white space across the board? I mean, of course, you'll have your top few accounts, but, you have to be, pragmatic. You have to be focused, and you just have to be master of your calendar and master of time management, right? So in order to do that, I think it's all about operationalizing and making something that's consistent. We've tested many different ways to do this, and you've already alluded to the fact a lot of people do this in spreadsheets. But the bottom line is that you just can't waste time getting organized, right? Yeah. It's almost like in my past life we sold project management software and for IT teams and marketing teams, and it's like waterfall based task assignment, resource management. You almost need that level of rigor these days in account planning and creating strategic account teams. But if everybody knows the foundation, if everybody knows the methodology, and you can just get in and just focus exclusively on the research in the company and the task at hand, you're going to save a lot of time.
So James, my last question to you would be, as a successful sales leader, what would be your key advice to sales teams to continue performing at their best levels given today's reality?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost is to get organized, right? It's to create an operational model and a methodology that everybody believes in, that's pragmatic, right? I think every sales organization is different. If you're a sales organization that has strategic sellers that are only responsible for one or two accounts, right? There's a lot more time available to dedicate to prep and to research and to account planning. But I think most SaaS companies are somewhere in the middle, right? It's, they have 10, 15, 20 plus accounts. And time management is probably the biggest differentiator I see from very talented reps, and organizational skills. Like, it's the ability to create content. It's, the ability to understand, have a high level of business acumen, motivated, obviously, but also very well organized and know how to spend their time effectively. And I think if you give your sales organization a model that works well to work within, that is automated, that gives them tools that's easy to find information, to be prepared, you're going to not only get better account planning and be more strategic within your sales cycles, you're also going to open up more time for those sellers to dedicate towards actually selling and meeting with clients.
That's so true. Wonderful advice. So thanks a lot, James. So there were some very, very interesting insights that you shared, practical ones, which a lot of sales organizations out there could emulate. And I love that the tip that you gave from how you cracked those meetings, and you had more people turning up for that. So thanks once again. It was really wonderful talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Karthik. It's great to be here. Appreciate the time.